at the start of this made-for-TV debacle at the White House today, where the president and Vice President J.D. Vance screamed at our ally Vladimir Zelensky and berated him with Russian government talking points. When this happened today in Washington, there's a couple things that stuck out to me. First of all, at the very start of this photo op, they had all the press in the room, Trump was asked right at the outset when he last spoke with Vladimir Putin. He said, quote, a couple of days ago, which was news because the U.S. government had said nothing about Donald Trump speaking with Vladimir Putin a couple of days ago. So that's new. He used to say, I'm not allowed to talk about that. Now he's admitting that he talks to Putin all the time, even when the U.S. government doesn't release any information about those calls like they do with all other foreign leaders. Second was the truly bizarre revelation that Russian state-controlled media, for some reason, was in the Oval Office today when this scene happened with Volodymyr Zelensky. Now, to be clear, the Trump White House will not allow the Associated Press or Reuters into the Oval Office to cover White House events anymore, but somehow TASS media, Kremlin-controlled Russian state media, somehow made their way into the Oval Office for this berating of the Ukrainian president today, and Russian state media was in the Oval Office somehow live streaming from the event. Afterwards, look at this bizarre statement from the White House attributed to an unnamed White House official. Quote, TASS was not on the approved list of media for today's pool. As soon as it came to the attention of press office staff that he was in the Oval, he was escorted out by the press secretary. He is not on the approved list for the press conference. It's not on the approved list. I have no idea how he got in there. To live stream for Kremlin-controlled state media the president and vice president of the United States screaming at Ukraine's president and berating him with Russian talking points. We don't know how the Kremlin guy got in here. It was weird. He just wandered in. I mean, people do. It's a free country. People do just wander into the Oval Office. A very radical thing is happening in our country. It is not only radical in the sense that it is a large directional change, right? Switching sides in a war, now standing against our allies of the last 80 years, now siding with Russia instead. I mean, no longer siding with the free world, now siding with the authoritarian governments of the world. Like, it's not just radical in that it is a 180-degree directional change. It is also radical in the sense that it is really radically unpopular with the American people. I mean, you can see that in the polling. Quinnipiac poll this month. Should the U.S. trust Vladimir Putin? Yes, 9%. No, 81%. Here's another one, the Economist YouGov poll out this month. Do you have a favorable or unfavorable view of Vladimir Putin? The American public say favorable 11%, unfavorable 78%.
But the fact that this thing about what Zelensky was wearing became an issue, let's do a little bit of a flashback. Here is J.D. Vance tweeting about this in 2023, and he says, look, I know Schumer changed the dress code, but letting someone in the Senate chamber dressed like this really crosses the line. It is amazing to me that this is even a conversation that we are having.
That's right. And it is just a total fall into the Trump reality television show that was his plan from the beginning. He is a top marketing. I would say he would run a phenomenal agency, social media agency as well. But the fact that this is what continues to get airwaves and real estate in our minds when it comes to the fact that we are now regressing back to another chapter in the Cold War is so stunning to us. Churchill came to the White House during World War II in his military garb. We have seen our elected officials go to post-natural disaster zones wearing windbreakers. Zelensky is in the middle of a war, and it is fully appropriate
I actually think that Churchill analogy, first of all, it's been made before. And when the war started, a lot of people said that he was channeling a sort of Churchillian aesthetic by basically signaling to his people as their commander-in-chief that they were in a war, right? And now it's become, I think, for the right, a symbol that he is cosplaying as a military hero when he's not.
Well, let's talk about what's most important. That was disgraceful, disgusting, disrespectful, dangerous, and bad for not just Ukraine, but bad for American national security. It felt un-American. It felt traitorous. I've never seen a reaction from veterans of all backgrounds like I have in the last couple of hours to that disgusting, demoralizing display. So I don't even want to focus too much on what was worn. I want to focus on what was said and what happened. And that was a real low point for American leadership. And right now, it also, importantly, to focus on, makes America less safe. Our allies are less supportive. We have more people around the world who hate us. And America, in my view, hasn't been this isolated since I and many others invaded Iraq. And I think that's what we have to focus on, is that America is less safe today because of that.
Yeah, I don't think people care about the clothes. This is something that people have talked about with Zelensky since the start of the war. He's typically worn the military fatigue, and people have talked about that. Washington, D.C.
Just to be clear, I don't want to interrupt you, but please continue. But
Russia is very, very pleased with how today went. I immediately went to socials to check Russian social media. And Dmitry Medvedev was once president of Russia, still very chummy with Putin, said...
Yeah, we have this, we have it up there,
Yeah.
we'll put it up there.
The insolent pig, meaning Volodymyr Zelensky, finally got a proper slap down in the Oval Office. And real Donald Trump is right. The Kiev regime is gambling with World War III. So this bootlicking performance in the White House by our public servants, our top public servants acting like they own the place. This is what it looked like to me. Two losers on bar stools acting like they own the bar, telling anyone who comes in, you got to go through us first, and you got to give me some flattery first. It was disgusting. This is not diplomacy. This isn't foreign policy. This is thuggery. And I got to tell you, our allies are scared, and our enemies are laughing.
Mm-hmm. It was like maybe when you were 2 years old and you got in trouble for putting your hand in the cookie jar, you know? It's like, oh, you didn't thank your parents enough for raising you. Or, you know, that's how I felt watching it.
It's all about kind of like, are you grateful enough? Are you saying thank you enough?
Yeah.
Do you love me enough? As opposed to it's life and death that we're talking about here.
But I felt like it was completely planned, Abby. I mean, even Trump said, this was great TV, and it's sort of like he let the cat out of the bag. Like, I think that this was staged, planned, because Trump and Vance know they're playing to the American public more than anything else. And if you go on any social media, you're seeing people say, yay, we got America back again, make America great again. And I was asking, how does this make America great again? I mean, this is different than being tough on crime or tough at the border. This is like, okay, I guess we're not going to give $350 million to Ukraine anymore. But what about U.S. security?
Okay, so answer her question. How does this make America great again, Malik?
Well, I think that it was a great press conference. I actually liked what Donald Trump and J.D. Vance did in that moment. I borrow from Lindsey Graham, who is a strong proponent of Ukraine. He's gone over to Ukraine several times. He said that he had a conversation with Zelensky this morning, and he told him, he said, security guarantees, save that conversation for later. It was Zelensky who decided to chime in on the question. I believe it was a reporter who asked it, and then it went downhill from there. Zelensky, I agree with J.D. Vance. Zelensky was disrespectful.
I don't know that that's what really happened, because
what we saw is what happened.
What you saw, okay, was more than halfway through a meeting that was not
it was
going
like 40 minutes.
that until J.D. Vance was the one who chimed in and basically said, you're not grateful enough. Essentially.
Emily, can you control your emotions? I bet you can.
I can.
I bet you can.
But Zelensky can't. And we saw that in the press conference.
He's been fighting for sovereignty for 3 years.
He was being combative.
Zelensky was chiming in about, actually, on a factual question, which is, can you trust Vladimir Putin to actually make good on his promises? Because Zelensky was there when they signed another deal with Putin that Putin did not
violated
uphold.
the entire time. This was an unmitigated disaster from a geostrategic perspective. The messages I got from allies across NATO on the way in here, from the think tank community, from D.C., from folks on the ground, was just utter and complete shock. Before he showed up today, there was already a spat previously where, he had said, hey, the president's living in a disinformation bubble. The president punched back and said, you're a dictator and you should have elections. They kind of finally put that aside. So this was already starting to bubble to the surface. Now you throw in the comments that were made today. I don't know that this is recoverable coming back from the other side of this. This is going to cause the Europeans to seriously question leadership at this point. Who is in charge? There's already comments coming about who's in charge of the free world, who's going to take responsibility for security. We have made a significant investment in Ukraine, well over $100 billion, and most of it was in defense spending. It wasn't cash that went over. Right. If that goes to waste, this is going to be seen as a U.S. loss, as a NATO loss, and a huge investment from the American taxpayers is going to be wasted. They have to get past this.
Yeah, I mean, look, if you are Putin, to your point, if you're Putin right now, you're sitting there thinking, they don't really care about Ukraine, so let's just take the whole thing.
Exactly.
I mean,
Right.
how do you not conclude that after what you just saw there? Trump spent more time saying that he's gone through so many hard times with Putin.
Right.
And that they understand each other because they endured things together. If you're Putin, you're like, okay, why are we even playing games about a deal? We can just take the thing.
I don't care.
So, folks, what we're seeing here is Zelensky obliterating Donnie with a second-day bombshell, one day after the events. Really, since that event, all day yesterday. Not only did he continue to pound at him in the media, this scandal really, Zelensky, and I know this wasn't his intent, but, he was disrespected, and he's not going to go quietly. He helped to expose the weakness of Donald Trump, the chaos of his White House, the inappropriateness of his vice president, the spinelessness, not of every single Republican. I've shared some examples, but of 95%, 99% of the Republican Party. All of that was done. But also, I don't know if you saw this on social media. I can't share all the examples because there's too many. Yesterday, J.D. Vance was like, this, you never even said thank you, Zelensky. You never even said thank you to the United States. Well, one, that's not true. He said thank you tons of times. He thanked Trump and Vance at the start of that meeting, like 40 minutes ago. I know Donnie's brain is going through cognitive decline, but JD, you're only a few years older than me. Your brain should still work, right? But let's be clear. Also, he went on social media, and then he was sharing all of the messages of support from world leaders, and in every single one, he said, "Thank you so much," at this world leader and their country and whatnot. Stabbing Donnie and twisting the knife. My goodness, this has gone bad for Trump.